Hi, Martin.
Hi, Victoria.
Hi, thank you for coming here today.
Thank you.
Would you please be so kind and introduce yourself? Tell us about your background and what you're doing now.
My name is Martin, and I'm co-owner and the sales manager of Nordic Sales Force. Myself, actually, my background starts around 15 years back when I actually didn't know I was a real salesperson. I'm educated within the military. I also been departed once in my life. It gives me a lot of experience in executing and also to follow up. But I just found out that sales was something that I really love. And up to now, I have been sitting with sales in big enterprise setups where I just came into a position and was just executing on this. And I found Nordic Sales Force back in 2021 and started out as a sales rep, developed myself into a team leader inside of Nordic Sales Force. And now my responsibility as a sales manager is that help our internal team with executing on strategy level. How can we make sure we get results on our sales rep? And also I'm selling our own concept and finding new clients and helping on this. I just have a background of loving sales.
Thank you. Would you please then tell us more about Nordic Sales Force? Who do you help and how do you help them?
Yeah. Nordic Sales Force is actually not that old. We were founded by Daniel in 2021, January. I came in at September 2021 with the idea of actually helping companies with more than just get a sales rep and finding some sales, because our belief is a lot of companies today struggle with sales, struggle with actually hiring a sales rep and making that person find results and find clients. And we just saw a history of a newly sales rep getting hired and then getting fired within 6-12 months. And we believe that most sales reps actually are able to make great possibilities and success with actually having the tools around them. So our product value is that we actually provide a sales team, not just a sales rep. So every time that we go into a new company with either it's different segments or products, we actually include both a sales rep that obviously takes the first approach, finding out who we interact with. They book meetings. They also hold the meetings and sometimes with our clients as well, if it's very complex. And then we follow up, making sure that we get the contract signed. So on the same level as if you were to hire your own sales. But we also include the team leader that actually take daily leadership of the sales rep, taking those one-to-one talks that actually take the sales training and making sure that the sales rep is motivated all the time. Sales rep are a bit difficult to keep up with. That's one thing. And the last part is the sales manager. That's also where I come in, to make sure we actually always are on the same direction and the right direction when it comes to the strategy. Is this working? Do we need to think outside of the box to get results? So we actually have more eyes, more brains as a team to make sure we get results. So that's our product. And those we help is we have a lot of different clients. We have more than 7 different companies today that mostly come from SaaS solutions, software as a service. It comes from the tile. If you have a product, push into the physical stores on chain level. Then we have consulting companies. And the last kind of road is that we also have a few production companies that has a complex solution that they provide. So that's the more segment level. So we have all, and it's very important that we focus on being good at values, knowing values of products more than just being product specialists. As many of our clients are very complex systems so we include them in our sales process. And most of our clients actually both come from Denmark, where we sell into the Nordic region, but we actually also have a lot of clients that coming from outside of Denmark, wanting to go into the Nordics market, which is a complex market to establish yourself, because we have that native awareness, can speak with them on a level that obviously is much more trustworthy. And we have been working with the Nordic market for a long time. So we know the experience and the history of how can we proceed from here and get results. So you don't need that facility. You don't need a country manager and a sales manager before you can get a start in either Denmark, Sweden, or Norway. So that's our specialty. So that's where we also exceed a lot and want to expand a lot more. And we're really good at that.
Mm. Do you help your clients only in Denmark or also in other countries?
Both. We have both clients in Denmark that want to go with either Norway, Sweden, or even further out. We can do that as well. But we do also have a good portion. I think like 30% of our clients today is companies from outside of the Nordic market. It could be England, it could be Germany, it could be Spain. We have Poland. We have all kind of different countries and companies that want to interact and want to penetrate the Nordic market, but they don't really know how to do it. So we could be that entry level.
So that they don't need to hire people who have the language skills. Language skills is not enough. The awareness of the culture, the insight, the feeling of the country or the vibe, the trends, everything, it's important. And that's what you can offer, right?
Exactly. We do have the experience today. We have almost 40 different kind of sales reps. And a sales department, 40 sales rep is a really big department. So we really have that upside of actually being able to use each other's background to make sure we can help each other and provide leads to each other. It's really a strong force for us.
Do you also help your customers to create the prospect lists to find out who the real customers or prospects are? Because sometimes foreign companies think that one sector is, but actually there is a different one. Do you help with these kind of advice and practical stuff too?
Yeah, definitely. That's some of the first things that we do when we interact with a new client, a new company. So we have a workshop where we look into what kind of experience did you have before interacting with us? What are going really good? What kind of experience did you try that failed? So we can learn from this. And then obviously we have a lot of experience ourselves, but then again, we do this together. So we are your new sales organization. So all the strategic, all the leadership and all the execution level, we try to put that into your interaction with your experience. So we find a common strategy that we can execute together. So before we start, our clients always say, go to this before we head out. So we make sure that we're on the same level when we start.
Yeah. I have one of my customers, a company from Estonia with you, and we have the most amazing sales rep who is helping us out. And yes, in that workshop, we found out many details that I didn't even come to. And also my customer from Estonia, they had no idea it's even possible. And every day or every week, we get new details. Oh, we should think about that. And we get the feedback from local customers from Denmark, prospects. And the pitch is getting better, and the local know-how is so visible and completely not doable from another country, by foreigners. So it's a huge help.
Yeah, I'm really glad for our cooperation there as well. So we really try to be that proactive, which is why we always have that weekly check-in by the consultant and a monthly check-in with the leadership. And we will also have a strategic setup as well, where we're going to look at the first 3 months. Did we learn from that? And how can we proceed going forward from the learnings we had the first months? And then we set up a new strategy for the next couple of 3 months. But yeah, we always try to share all the experience that we so we can make sure that then again, that we are on the same page all the time.
What do you think are the most effective strategies a foreign company can use to succeed with B2B sales in Denmark?
Yeah, so that's a complex question because there can always be a lot of strategy or go-to market strategy to get success. So it really depends on your own kind of complexity. What do you come from? The first thing that we always do is that we try to, again, look off the experience that they had themselves, and then we interacted with our own experience. We have probably tried basically every kind of strategies to start out with, so we know which way we'll go. We also try to see if we can talk with some of the current clients to learn from the experience that they have from using our new clients. So we have some kind of value to talk with. That's usually also some start with. But the first thing we do is to finding out what kind of ICP is this client having. And when we can conclude the best ICP client, the ideal customer profile, we can develop some kind of segmentation from that. And when we have finalized some kind of a list out of the ICP, then we're starting the reach outs. We usually have a start process where we are asking, how is this sounding when we act like this new client, to find more history and background, produce or interact as a new client and with a new product, with a new value. What do you say from your perspective? And then we've used that experience like the first couple of weeks to finalize something from that. And then this is sounding really good. We're actually getting some good conversation. We even maybe book some meetings from the start to find out, is this working? Is this actually a good segment, a good ICP in the Nordic markets from this client? Is it even working? If it's not, then we are trying to find out, okay, what can we go from here? So we always try to be proactive, but the first couple of weeks is more questionnaire. It's more finding out what works, what doesn't work. We can have a mindset of this is the real ICP, but in the Nordic markets compared to maybe a Dutch market can be different. So we need to be very proactive and change direction if it doesn't work. That make sense?
It definitely does make sense. How does Danish decision making differ from other markets? Let's take Scandinavian and German maybe, because you probably have lots of experience from there.
We do also interact with the German market as well. It's different, and the German market is different from other countries as well, as just a bit behind on going into software and try to develop on the way that they work more smooth, more system measurement and being optimizing instead of doing the same thing that I have done the last 15 years, because that have worked. Where the Nordic market, Denmark, is much more thinking outside of the box, being proactive of thinking on how can we optimize each kind of segment and even departments on each company. So I'm much more thinking of how can we solve our own situation on that person's level. So if you have like a marketing manager, how can that marketing manager help himself in his function? And can we help that person with our solution? So they are much more open in that kind of way. And they also more open to have online meetings like this. We can take a sales process more often on an online level, where we see from German perspective, we still need to have that physical presence before we can interact and actually make a sales process. And they also are slower. They need something to be fully on the box. The Nordic markets are probably much more open to, okay, we can try this, we can try that, and see where we go from that. Where the Germans like, okay, we tried this, we need to have a conclusion from this before we do this. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. What about Sweden and Norway?
It's much the same. Norway is at least much more Denmark. Sweden have multiplicalities issues compared to the Danish way. It's much more a longer system in the Swedish way, but we also see the Swedish being open for the Nordic native language. If we interact with the Danish, or we can somehow at least start out with Danish. I actually had a Swedish client myself a week ago where we started out with Danish. I'm also half Swedish myself, but the Swedish clients were not that good at understanding the Danish, or at least my slow Danish. So we changed it up to English, but we started out with the native Nordic language, and it broke down barrier you need to do in the sales process right in the start. So we have that advantage. And I see the Swedish being much open and also be very smart of thinking of how can we also develop and go ahead with our own companies. So they are also like Denmark, thinking much more on a position level on how can we interact and help ourselves actually in the company.
I'm just thinking again a little bit Denmark, Norway, Sweden. Do you have a feeling which market do foreign countries or foreign companies choose first between the three? And
Or
why?
that depends a lot on the product and also focus. I would say that usually from a foreign company that's probably are very strong in their own country that want to start out and try to penetrate the Nordic market, I will usually try and focus one country at a time. It could be a short focus. It could be like, okay, let's test Denmark for 1 month, let's test Sweden for 1 month, and Norway for 1 month, finding out which one are most open, because penetrating a new market as the Nordic market can be very resourceful. It can take time. So I would say try to use your time smart by testing out small fragments of each country. Finding, okay, this seems Norway is much more open for my product. Then I'll focus the next 6 months from that experience of the first 3 months on each country. Does that make sense?
It does. But I
Yeah.
guess the dilemma between choosing between the three countries, it will always be there, and how to handle the issue, or to take them all, of course, one after another. I would
You can
not
also
starting with all three at the same time, right?
You can always focus on all three at the same time. Just have that in mind. It will take a lot of time penetrating all three markets at the same time. So if you are open for that and you have the time and the resources for that, it's definitely an option. You will obviously find out which country that you will have the ROE on, return on investment, but just make sure that you have the resources for that. It's not cheap going to three markets at the same time. So that's probably, I will prioritize the other solution first.
Yeah. But if you could give only one piece of advice to a sales leader looking to scale their sales in Denmark, what would that be?
Make sure you have a strong market analyze. Try and reach out first, finding out the response you actually tell about your product, your solution. Make a conclusion from that. Make sure you have enough experience to make a conclusion. Perhaps maybe contact some people that are strong in the market. In Denmark, it could be us, but it could also be some other companies, depending on the way you want to learn from the country. But I will probably try to find out more before I use a lot of resource going into. So if it's Denmark, try and contact providers like us, try and contact your ideal customer profile again. I say try and contact them in more. We are very strong in the Dutch market with this product. How will that sound in Denmark? Just for curiosity. And then you will have a good response on that, on should we invest in this?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you. I have 5 questions or so that we could answer really shortly, that will give the answers to some of the most common questions that I'm getting. What is the one thing that you can see that foreign companies often misunderstand about selling to Danish customers?
That's a very good question, Victoria. I think the most common problem that we see foreign companies try to interact with Danish or Sweden or Norway countries. I think the common problem is that they think it's the same problem in the current country. It's going to be the same problem in a new country. Sometimes have a tendency to hold their ground in this situation and pain on themselves, where I think you should be more open-minded. It could be something completely different, because if we kind of work from your perspective in your country and your situation, we start one step behind before we can actually see some quality from understanding. So I will think more open-minded when going into a new country. Don't take your experience from your own country into a new country like Denmark, Sweden, Norway.
Practical question. If a company has never sold in Denmark before, what's the first step? First step they need to do?
Contact Nordic Sales Force. I think the first step you will do is make sure you want to go into the Danish market. If you already decided, maybe you used a bit of time for finding out, okay, the Danish market could be a fit, then I will say, make a short market research anyway to find out again if the response for your product and your value proposition is grounded enough for you to use some resources. When you are at that time, invest either in a resource like us. That's one way. If you want to have it internally, which I can understand as well, if you want that, make sure you invest enough time to have that person or team, depending on the resource level here, and make sure that the team or person have enough time to evaluate if this is something that works or not. I have seen at least some companies have tried out a few things, but they maybe have had a sales rep in interaction with the new markets, but they only used 3 months. So 3 months is not enough time to conclude if this will work or not in a new country. Because in 3 months, I think most companies, even if it's strong with a lot of resources, will fail the first 3 months.
What about finding a consultant, for example, from Denmark with an industry background and getting a really deep market analysis? Would that be something to invest into?
It could be. It will be an expensive resource if you need this is like a sales agent, which is very known to be used, and it can work, definitely can work. But you need to make sure you also invest a lot of resources in this person as well, as it can fail from time to time, because even though that you probably maybe find a sales agent that have the industry background to understanding if you can sell this in or not, understand that your product or your company has still never been to Denmark. So if that's the conclusion, even though if you find a person with the right background, it can still fail. So focus more on the process and understanding of going into a new market than trying to find and use a lot of money on a person with the right background, because it can often fail as well, because the interaction is maybe the wrong way, but it can also be the right way. Just make sure that you have the resources and time to make it work either way.
Do you think it's possible to expand into the Danish market without even ever visiting the country?
It's a good question. I would say no, but it can also work. I'm really a positive guy. I make most things happen, but then again, I also have 15 years of selling different kind of products. I'm not that focused on a specialized on this or that, but setting yourself up to succeed with no experience, no interaction with the Danish market is you start out roughly. So if you want to do that, then make sure you have the resource and time limits to make it work. Because if you just think you can go to the Danish market and succeed from the start without knowing anything from the Danish market, then you will probably get a few surprises on the way.
Or not understanding the Danish way of being.
Exactly.
On human level.
You use a lot of money before even getting some good quality process and sale process and a pipeline up building. So you use a couple of months just learning from the culture before you even get some sort of results.
Why do you think some companies struggle with cold outreach in Denmark, even if their product is really good and fitting to the market?
That's a very good question. I think a lot of people kind of end in sales, but don't like sales. Sales is not like an education that you need to take before. Okay, now this is a sales work because that person has been in it for a long time. What I see most companies fail with is actually not finding the right sales rep that loves sales, all the way down to cold calling, because cold calling, even though if it's on a strong market, it's a B2B process, you don't need to take 100 calls a day to succeed, but you still need to love to reach out on a phone, even though it goes out to a physical meeting or you go to a different kind of fairs, you still need to love that interaction with the phone. If you don't do that, you are set up for failure.
I have another question from that. So let's say your sales rep does the cold calls and meets themselves first, the prospects. Is it a good idea for the foreign company, the salespeople from there, to come and visit the prospects physically in Denmark, or is it okay with online only?
I always say that it's a very good idea to come physical. One thing is to build a relationship, which I think strongly in. To have that relation is necessary for success. Not saying that just visiting online and all that can be useful. We do have clients from far away from Denmark that we only met online and we still have success with them. But those that we interact with physically build up more a real relationship. We tend to get success faster than the other ones because it gives a sales rep or whatever you have clients give more responsibility, wanting to make sure this will succeed because now you know the person, you know the company on more intimately level.
Name the biggest mistake foreign companies do when starting with their sales activities in Denmark.
Biggest mistake is, again, following their strategy from their own country, from the experience that they know. I've seen it multiple times, just, okay, this is the way we've done it. We build our company on. Good for you and your company for your current situation. But I say that we can start out with this, a company strongly wanting to do this strategy. And then we say, okay, we can go with it, but just making sure that when I get experience from this after 14 days and it doesn't work, we'll change it because it's probably not the same interaction strategy that you need. So the most common failure I see is using the same strategy they built their company on. And I respect it. I really understand why they want to just do the same thing because it worked already, but it probably won't work in Denmark, Sweden, or Norway. It could be, but just make sure that you know that it probably won't.
I guess that goes to also when it comes to Norwegian and Swedish companies who want to come to Denmark, then they probably tend to assume even more.
Yeah, definitely. I have a big client from Sweden right now that we haven't started out with, but they are coming from Stockholm to Aarhus, where we'll actually next week. So they are using and investing a lot of time and resources to join us now and again meet us, build that relationship, see what we invest in. But their problem was that it's a big company. They are in 20 countries, are strong in both Norway and Sweden, but Denmark somehow failed. And their experience was actually a native barrier because they only tried to reach out for Danish companies in English. So that was actually the barrier, or actually, at least that's what they found to be the pain or the problem. So that's why they want to work with us, because we have that strong relationship and interaction with Denmark. Language barrier can often be one.
Yeah, I just have to ask, because we all know that they speak really good English. So that's why also foreign companies, they assume it's okay to start their sales activities, outreach in English. I guess that is one of the most often occurring obstacles or backlashes when they do that, instead of getting local help that does the first 2-3 touch points in local language, and then they can step in and speak their own, or probably English or any other language.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's also how mostly we work. The language barrier is always a problem. I don't know if the Danish people are just prude with this. And this is perhaps why our product, our company kind of really works and evolve. We are plus 40 people now. And I also get a lot of calls from outside trying to sell to us. I work with sales. I usually give people a bit of a time to present themselves, but I just feel most times with people speaking English from companies outside of Denmark have I can easily hear that English is not their main language, which makes them more nervous. It could be more robotic approach. It doesn't feel like they feel confident in approaching me. So I don't feel confident in going forward and proceeding some sort of connection or a meeting or anything else. I usually give people advices and just thank you for your time. I can also do it in a bit of a rough way sometimes. I mean it in the best way sometimes, but I see so many sales rep and a language barrier and not being confident in your approach is tough. You need to be confident when you reach out, which is why it's always much easier in a native language than using sales.
True. I've actually never thought about that additional layer of mistrust or obstacle that comes with the accent. Of course, English is not my native language. In Denmark, I reach out in Danish, again, with an accent, but it's still in Danish.
But it's Danish, and I think as long as you try, then it definitely works. I've heard your Danish speaking. Okay. Danish is very good, so no problem there. And also, I'm like half Swedish. Reach out in Swedish on multiple times. My Swedish is not the best. It's much more on like a hobby level, but it gets to start going, and then I can also go back to English where it's much stronger, even though my English is not my strong suit either, but I can understand freely.
Why would foreign companies choose Denmark over Germany?
Ooh, that's a good question. It could also be it could also not be the right thinking. Germany is much bigger than Denmark. So the market is obviously bigger, could be stronger, but from my experience, and that being said, Danish, I've been selling in Denmark for the last 15 years. I think it's much easier to penetrate the Danish market than the German market, but roll back to if you have the right product for the right segment, Germany could be a much better fit than the Danish market. So that can really, I think it depends on your own product, your segment, to make sure that understanding if it's either Denmark, Germany, or if it's Sweden, it's Finland, if it's the right country to use your resource and time on. Like to make sure you have a good market analyze before you invest a lot of resource and time to roll with it, because when you first say, okay, then time and money will go by, and you need to have a good conclusion on starting, and you need to give it time as well. So you need to invest that time. When you conclude this, we'll start with Denmark ahead of Germany. Then we make sure that Denmark is the right solution, and the other way around, if you think Germany is the right solution, make sure you make Germany work. Otherwise, it's a bad conclusion from the start.
Germany is huge when it comes to volume, but it's also a very tough market.
It is. It's very tough.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. That was very interesting. I learned so much.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else you would like to wrap up with?
I was just thank you for being here as well. I just love all talks around sales. So also if people are interested in hearing my conclusion or my idea to maybe interact with a new country. Now, my strong suit is Denmark, Sweden, Norway, but we also in a various different countries. Germany is one of our stronger ones as well.
Thank you. So we will add your contact information, and people can find you also on the website and LinkedIn, and we will post all this information.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank
you so much. Thank you so much for taking time for us.
Thank you, Victoria.
All right. So I was grilling and roasting you a little bit.
I love
it. Because many questions, they come from the answers, and also the dilemma between Scandinavia, or actually more Denmark and Germany. It's a topic that is up all the time on the surface, at least with the people or the companies I talk with. And of course, everyone wants to go first the German market, but then they burn their fingers really fast.
Yeah, that's
And
what we see as well. And then again, it's back to sales is complex when it comes to making sure to finding out if it's the right solution, it's the right country. I think investment in market analysis is the go-to.
Ja.
Og nu behøver vi heller ikke snakke engelsk.
Nej, det er rigtigt.
Ja.